Hello, dear listeners. Welcome to the Telehead Audiobook channel, where stories come to life through the magic of sound. I am your host, Telehead, and I'm here to guide you through a world of imagination. Hawthorne crossed over and ended up in a saintly monastery full of beautiful women. Here, he met intellectual and gentle Sister Heidi, petite and aloof Sister Yuta, knowledgeable and gentle Sister Butterfly, and Sister Celine, who had a leader's temperament, maturity, and steadiness. But having cleared the pure love route in the game Which Monastery, he knew very well that each of them was a terrifying monster that devoured people without blinking an eye. So, sit back, relax, and let the stories unfold. Let's embark on this adventure together.
Chapter 26. Start the fight. The latter carefully looked at it for a moment, nodded gently, and said, "Indeed, they are all local goods. The boss is wise, and the boss has a stronger insight." After a pause, he continued to ask, "So boss, how do we deal with him?" The bald man pondered for a moment, then closed his eyes again. "No matter who he is, the mission cannot fail. Inform the brothers to strike first. Knock him out and tie him up, but don't hurt him. In case he has connections, we can explain later. If not, we can sell him to Mrs. Castellanti. She will definitely like him. Smuggling weapons, trafficking drugs, and smuggling stolen goods are important sources of funds for the Shanasa Guild. Naturally, they have long been adept at the trafficking of ordinary children with attractive appearances, selling them as playthings to the privileged and wealthy." Suddenly, the skinny boy's face brightened, nodded, and then stepped back. He whispered a few words in the ears of his brothers, and immediately they all nodded repeatedly, gripping tightly onto the weapons at their waists. Time passed by minute, and after about 3 minutes, a human thug with a red mohawk suddenly burst into the tavern, shouting, "Oh no, boss, Paul is dead. This is their secret code." Upon hearing this, the bald and muscular man immediately glared angrily and said, "Dare to kill my brother, you're asking for death." As soon as the words fell, more than a dozen thugs in the entire tavern stood up at the same time. One of them, acting swiftly, suddenly kicked towards the female half-orc. Then, countless long sticks and short rods were hurled at her, one after another. Faced with this sudden situation, this female half-beast is also considered battle-hardened. After taking a flying kick, she quickly got up, one arm protecting her head, while blocking and retreating to the side. At the same time, her other hand hurriedly reached for her weapon. Fortunately, she was born tall and inherited the tough skin and thick flesh of an orc. Most of these gangsters have suffered from malnutrition since childhood and are not tall. Otherwise, with so many blows to the head, she would probably have fallen into a coma long ago. "You, go die." Pain stimulated the ferocity of her orc bloodline. This person unfastened the hard-headed hammer from her waist and then relentlessly exchanged injuries, smashing the heads of every member of the Shanasa gang. While caught in the fierce battle over here, another quick-witted thug immediately pulled out a short stick from his waist and fiercely swung it towards the back of Hawthorne's head. Bang! Hawthorne was caught off guard and was struck directly on the back of his head by that short stick. However, at this moment, all the spell preparations he had made in advance to guard against unexpected events came into play. Click. First shattered was the imprint of the magic trick he had prepared in advance, Blade Protection. This spell is disposable and will take effect and the body suffers actual physical damage, neutralizing most of its power. So the pain he felt at the back of his head was not much different from being hit by the teacher's chalk. And not only that, another spell also takes effect at the same time. Aegis of Aegisith. The invisible protective force field formed by this spell will bear the damage for his physical body. And before this force field is completely penetrated, it can feed back intense freezing to enemies who attack Hawthorne at close range. A cold air suddenly spread out from the center of the short stick, and the temperature around Hawthorne seemed to drop by 10 degrees in an instant. The terrifying low temperature climbed up the right hand of the gangster, causing his entire arm to turn pale and blue in an instant, like the arm of a frozen corpse. Click. The frozen hand could no longer hold the short stick, so it suddenly fell and hit the ground. The dead nerves sent out their final pain signal, reaching the thug's mind and causing him to let out a scream. "Ah!" He suddenly stepped back, his left hand covering his right arm, with a frightened expression. "What are you?" This scream also abruptly brought Hawthorne back to his senses. After all, he was someone who grew up in a peaceful era and had only heard about such violent incidents in the news. He had never actually been involved in a bloody fight before, so he was caught off guard just now and his mind went blank. "And now, it feels like the back of my head was just hit, very likely to be killed on the spot." Actually not really, he suddenly got scared and broke out in a cold sweat. And when he realized that these gangsters' weapons couldn't harm him at all, the frustration of being imprisoned in the monastery and unable to go anywhere, mixed with the anger of being attacked at this moment, instantly turned into an infinite and intense desire to kill. "Those strong and cruel witches bullying me when I was weak, I can let it go. But you weaklings, who were easily killed by me like cutting grass, dare to bully me? Unforgivable. Go to hell." He suddenly stood up, his hand already pressed on the magic book in his hand. Without any incantation, a powerful burst of magic erupted from him. Thunder Wave. Boom. Thunder Wave, a ring-shaped spell, erupts with tremendous energy from oneself towards the surroundings, causing damage while repelling all people and objects nearby. This is a very useful spell that easily pushes away close-range enemies, and often without causing actual fatal or deadly harm. The only drawback is that it can produce a loud noise that can be heard clearly within a few hundred meters. And in the narrow space of the tavern, this loud noise instantly became even more deadly, instantly causing everyone in the tavern to have a headache. And the worst part was the gang that attempted to attack and kidnap him, as well as the people who followed behind him. With a tremendous force, these people were caught off guard and their bodies were instantly thrown backwards, crashing heavily into the table behind them. Their heads tilted to the side, and their fate became uncertain. Even the long table and stools beside him were overturned by this sound, and the things on them crashed to the ground with a clatter. Several drunkards who were leaning on the long table also fell to the ground. It's no wonder that the power of Hawthorne's Thunderclap Wave should already be at the limit of a Tier 1 spell. After all, his key casting attribute, Charm, is the highest value achievable by non-legends, a whopping 20 points. This continuous commotion immediately attracted the attention of everyone in the entire tavern. In front of the counter, the innkeeper Alan, who was originally slightly annoyed because members of the Shanesa Guild dared to cause trouble in his tavern, suddenly stood up with a shocked expression in his eyes. A spellcaster. Not in the St. Hywan Magic University, where ordinary students who have learned one or two tricks dare to call themselves wizards, but true practitioners who have mastered the first level of spells. Why did such a person suddenly come to my tavern today? Being able to become the most well-known intermediary in Nangang District, Alan's insight is naturally far superior to ordinary people. Just from Hawthorne's actions and the damage caused, he immediately judged that this person is at least proficient in 3 level 1 spells, Mage Armor, Thunder Wave, and Aegis of Aegisite. This is real talent, not to mention, looking at his appearance so young and tender, it is possible that in the future he will master 2nd tier, or even 3rd tier spells. Alan can see the reason behind it. Even if others are not very perceptive, they can still tell that this young man is not someone to be messed with. The bald head with a giant eye on top suddenly turned around, and a pair of eyes stared wide open, looking straight at Hawthorne. Is this really a magician? Although the proportion of true spellcasters in the port of Libreville is only slightly more than 1%, these spellcasters are not evenly distributed. In the core districts of Mithril District, Central District, Blackstaff District, and University City, spellcasters can even appear in groups, while in the 4 major port districts, as well as the Wilderness District and Rubble District, these peripheral areas, it is possible to not find a single spellcaster among 1,000 people. So even though these little gangsters can kill without blinking an eye, it's also possible that they have never seen a living spellcaster in their entire lives, nor have they seen real magic. So at this moment, countless gangsters couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts, to the point where they couldn't even hold on to their weapons. Although they were ruthless and had shed countless amounts of blood, they were all from the lower class after all, and had never received any proper education. They have hardly ever seen a real spellcaster, and they don't even have the ability to distinguish between different professions such as mage, warlock, sorcerer, etc. Naturally, they cannot have an accurate understanding of their abilities. So at this moment, when a living, hostile magician stood there, the legends they had heard in their early years, such as magicians can permanently turn you into a pig with just one spell, came to mind, making them tremble uncontrollably. Damn it, how did I manage to provoke such a character? I don't understand why these thugs are afraid of me. At this moment, Hawthorne, who was suddenly attacked, was almost filled with fear and anger in his mind. He gasped for breath, his eyes resembling an angry bull, staring at the leader of the Shanasar Guild with giant eyes on his forehead. At this moment, there is only one thought left in his heart. Take down all these people. Chapter 27, The Power of Spells. Then, he recited an incantation and once again cast the spell, Blade Protection, upon himself. He then took large strides across the overturned long table and walked straight towards the bald figure with a giant eye on its forehead. As soon as he approached, the members of the Shanasa Mafia on the other side of the table involuntarily took a step back, looking panicked. Only the bald man had some courage left. Although he was regretting his decision, he knew it was too late to turn back now. He had no choice but to steel himself, draw out his own dagger, and point it at Hawthorne, saying, "Stop." He shouted angrily, his eyes wide open, trying to intimidate the young man with a tender face with his fierceness. However, Hawthorne, who knew that he was currently protected by magic, would not be scared by these ordinary weapons wielded by thugs. He completely ignored the warning from the bald man and continued walking forward with his own magic book, intending to plunge straight into the crowd. So the bald guy, without any hesitation, stabbed Hawthorne directly in the abdomen with a short knife. He didn't actually use his full strength because this move was actually a feint. According to his experience, when the opponent sees the knife coming, they will definitely dodge, and dodging means losing balance. He can immediately grab the opponent's wrist with his other hand, subdue him, and prevent him from using any spells again. However, what he didn't expect was that, facing this knife, Hawthorne didn't flinch at all and walked straight ahead. So, this bald man's short knife inevitably stabbed him in the stomach. Rustling. Instantly, the imprint of the sword's blade protection blocked this attack, and the Aegis of Aegises was immediately triggered. Intense cold climbed up the bald man's right arm, instantly numbing him almost to the point of losing consciousness. Intense pain attacked his nerves, causing the guy's forehead to immediately break out in a layer of sweat. Hawthorne, who was almost unscathed, stepped over his figure and walked to the center of the crowd, infusing magic into the book. Suddenly, a ring of spell thunder waves appeared again. Boom! The powerful energy wave exploded around him as the center. No matter how these gangsters tried to defend themselves in a panic, they were like praying mantises trying to stop a car. They were sent flying one by one, crashing into tables, chairs, benches, and even the bar counter. For a moment, the sound of wailing continued one after another, with countless wine glasses and plates falling to the ground with a crash, shattering and leaving the interior of the tavern in a mess. Only the experienced female half-orc quickly turned around and jumped onto the back of the female half-ogre gatekeeper before he could cast his spell. Two strong women collided with each other, but this also allowed them to avoid the most serious harm from Lei Mingbo. So, although they were in a sorry state, they were at least unharmed. Behind the counter, Alan couldn't help but touch his forehead slightly, feeling his heart ache. Damn it, all recorded on Shauna's account. Alan was heartbroken over his property, and as for Hawthorne, listening to the painful cries of the Shanasa gang, looking at their miserable state and the fear on their faces, he felt a release of the pent-up frustration and anger in his heart, and he felt a sense of satisfaction throughout his body. These damn guys deserve this kind of ending. Then, he turned his head and glanced at the few remaining scattered hooligans who were still standing, but their legs were already trembling, their faces filled with fear, and they couldn't even hold their weapons steady. He clearly has never killed anyone, but at this moment, in the eyes of those gangsters, his gaze seems even more fierce than their commander. In an instant, their emotions almost collapsed. You, "Don't come over, I surrender, I surrender." Click. A hooligan named Shauna unexpectedly threw away his weapon, knelt down on the ground, and tears streamed down his eyes as he pleaded, "Master Mage, spare our lives." The remaining people also realized what was happening and immediately fell to their knees, begging for mercy in unison. Knowing that the other party has completely collapsed, Hawthorne breathed a sigh of relief and felt his own anger dissipate. He then waved his hand and said, "Go away." Immediately, those few people felt as if they had been granted amnesty, quickly helping their leader up and calling out to the other conscious comrades, carrying the unconscious ones on their backs, limping and hobbling as they walked out, resembling a group of frightened stray dogs. At this point, the tavern finally became quiet again. The female ogre guard at the door didn't move at all throughout the whole time. She just watched the show with a wide grin, laughing happily. One reason, although rare for mages, but judging from Hawthorne's performance just now, with her half-ogre physique, Hawthorne probably can't hurt her. Another reason is that she is just a security guard, and the property in the tavern is not hers. Besides, with Alan's influence, the party that loses the fight will be compensated. After Sean Nassa left, Hawthorne didn't rush to leave either. He watched as the table in the middle flipped over and his ordered peanuts scattered. So he simply turned around, walked to the window, and sat down at an empty table, trying to calm his emotions. However, the scene from just now kept replaying uncontrollably in his mind. Comfortable. Indeed, the nobility of the spellcaster is evident. Even these ruthless individuals with blood on their hands cannot last a single round under their command. This feeling of having power, it's really good. In front of the counter, seeing that Hawthorne had no intention of leaving, the boss Alan gave a signal with his eyes. A waiter next to him understood and quickly brought a large plate of boiled peanuts to Hawthorne's table, without saying a word, and quickly retreated. And the female half-orc looked at him with a puzzled and uncertain gaze, her face showing a mix of confusion and struggle, unsure of how to express gratitude to a noble mage. After hesitating for a while, she slowly walked over, lowered her head, first clenched her fists, then bent down, and performed a very strange but, in her opinion, decent etiquette. Only then did she speak, saying, "I am Yagura, a member of the Senta Forest Combat Unit. Thank you, sir, for your help just now." Hawthorne's action of peeling peanuts suddenly paused upon hearing the name, Santa Lin Hui. Is she a member of that dark intelligence network? The Scatterwood Society is a large and ancient underground intelligence organization. Its core belief is that public information is always modified and biased towards the interests of the information provider, therefore it is unreliable. We must use our own means to obtain true information from the darkness. Their agents are spread all over the world and they like to obtain the information they want from the secretaries, servants, chefs, grooms, and others of those important figures through methods such as extortion, threats, seduction, bribery, and inducement. They then compile it into books, sell it, and profit from it. Naturally, in order for such intelligence organizations to continue operating, they inevitably become involved in illegal activities such as smuggling. However, besides that, they also possess a lot of information and evidence regarding high-ranking officials accepting bribes, embezzling public funds, engaging in insider trading, and other misconduct, which can be considered as significant contributions to combating such activities. Therefore, in a sense, this organization is not entirely dark, but more like an intelligence organization that operates in the gray area, both righteous and evil. However, the agents of the scattered forest are generally engaged in covert operations. Obviously, the fact that this woman named Yagura dares to reveal her identity indicates that she is probably not a significant figure, at most just a slightly higher-ranking thug. Thinking like this, facing Yagura's gratitude, he shook his head slightly. "They also attacked me. I was just defending myself. You don't need to thank me." Yagura's face still carried a sense of unease. She slowly straightened her body and said earnestly, "Even so, I still have to thank you. If it weren't for you, I would have definitely been captured by them. I will always remember this favor in my heart." Saying this, she placed her right fist on her left chest again, and then bowed, saying, "Yagura left first." After speaking, she then turned around and walked out of the tavern with big strides. Hawthorne ate peanuts by himself, and a strange silence fell over the tavern, with only the sound of the waiter silently cleaning and straightening the tables and chairs echoing. However, this silence did not last long. Before long, the boss, Alan, walked over to him with his prosthetic leg, carrying 2 glasses of beer, limpingly. He placed one glass next to him and asked, "Do you drink?" Chapter 28, Aaron's Temptation. Hawthorne shook his head and declined his kind offer. "There are rules in my family, and I can't drink alcohol right now." "Rules are meant to be broken, that's how they limit your freedom," the boss chuckled, knowing that young people at this age are rebellious and love to hear such things. However, he didn't insist and moved the wine aside, then continued to chat in a friendly manner, saying, "My name is Alan Alice, I am the owner of this tavern. And you? What should I call you?" "Nigel Hawthorne." Hawthorne directly stated his former name. "Hawthorne?" The boss carefully recalled and realized that he had never heard of this surname before, so it is likely not from a prominent noble family. "Okay, if it's really that kind of influential and powerful person, I can't afford to associate with them." "Nice name." He chuckled and then gave a thumbs up. The spell earlier was fantastic. Hawthorne shook his head and said, "Trivial skills, not worth mentioning." "Ah, how can you say such things?" Alan raised an eyebrow and then generously praised, "I have never seen someone so young who can use spells so skillfully, like flowing clouds and entering a trance. I have lived in Nangang district for over 70 years, and I have seen young mages as outstanding as you." He said this, suddenly feeling nostalgic, "But then again, you are not from Nangang district, are you?" "East Harbor," Hawthorne said, speaking the truth. His family did indeed live in the East Harbor district, but he had simply escaped from home. He naturally couldn't tell the truth to Alan. Although he, who had played the game, knew that this intermediary was generous and reliable, he was also very clear in his heart that, first of all, this guy was also a bold and cunning old fox who wouldn't hesitate to throw others under the bus. Therefore, Hawthorne had to be extremely careful when dealing with him. Donggang district, what a great place. Hearing him say this, the boss couldn't help but sigh. It is the main port, with countless cargo ships coming in and out from across the ocean every day. Many small and large enterprises, multinational corporations, all do business there. As long as you have the ability, seize the opportunity, and you can soar to great heights. Unlike us in Nangang district, where we can only make a living by fishing for our whole lives and still be bullied by Amazon women, ha ha ha. He tried to flatter, but when Hawthorne heard this, he instinctively denied it, saying things like, "How can you say that so well? Money belongs to the big shots, and poor people still suffer the same hardships." But when the words reached his lips, he suddenly stopped, his thoughts turned around, and he swallowed back all these words. "No, the Donggang district is not as good as you said." Hawthorne's eyes flickered, and with these familiar lines, he had already deduced that Alan was trying to please him. Obviously, this is aimed at his identity as a spellcaster. Since that's the case, why not use rhetoric to make this old fox more fearful? Although they advocate for fair competition and free trade, there are always some individuals who lack ambition and are lazy, constantly clamoring about unfair distribution and demanding unreasonable high treatment. Hawthorne said this, showing a sincere smile to the boss. In this aspect, it is actually not as good as the Nangang district. After all, how many fish can be caught really depends on everyone's ability, and we can't blame the sea for it. Unlike the dock workers in Donggang district, who clearly don't work hard but always claim that someone is exploiting and oppressing them. Alan really wanted to slam the table and angrily reprimand the shameless exploiting class. But years of experience made him forcefully suppress this impulse, and instead, he put on a smile and said, "Ah, yes, yes, yes." However, this speech also confirmed one thing for him: the seemingly ordinary-looking, well-spoken young man who constantly utters phrases like, "Why not eat meat and rice?" is probably indeed a child from a wealthy family. Instead of suddenly appearing from a poor family, a genius who rises to the top. Saying this, the innkeeper then threw out another question: "How old are you this year?" 15. This time Hawthorne spoke the truth. "You see, you're still so young." The boss shrugged. "Those people just now, they are the toughest warriors in the Nangang district. and yet you easily dealt with them, didn't you? You should be proud at your age. Don't people usually praise you like this? No, Hawthorne shook his head slightly, his expression very calm. Just a few first-level spells, nothing to be proud of. Alan stared at his expression intently and was surprised to find that he truly couldn't detect even a hint of vanity or pride on his face. Sigh, this indicates that the peers he usually interacts with are probably even more outstanding than him. However, he didn't know that Hawthorne's character in the game could easily cast 9th-level spells in the later stages. A few first-level spells were nothing to be proud of course. That can only mean that your teacher's demands on you are really too harsh. Boss Alan shook his head and sighed. Where is this teacher from? St. Hywan. Is that where you study? Hawthorne shook his head again. No, self-studying at home. This is also the truth, but when it comes to Alan's ears, it means something else. Is this hiring a tutor? What are the family conditions for inviting a magician to come to the house as a teacher? Parvenu? Grand aristocracy? No, his surname is not one of those prominent families. Has there been any nouveau riche with the surname Hawthorne in Donggang district in recent years? He is not clear and wants to continue asking 2 more questions. And just at that moment, the door of the tavern was pushed open again, and a tall, well-proportioned, and stunningly beautiful young nun, with a hint of nervousness, appeared at the entrance. It's not someone else, it's Heidi. And when she turned her gaze this way and saw Hawthorne, she immediately breathed a sigh of relief, followed by a comforting smile. Seeing her coming, Hawthorne quickly got up and said to the boss, "I'm sorry, sir, let's talk another time. I have to leave now." Saying that, he packed up his belongings and turned to walk towards the door. "Well, let's chat next time," the boss also said politely, watching him leave. But when he saw Heidi, the most well-known intermediary in the Nangang district, his pupils instantly contracted. Which nun is from the convent under the name of the goddess of life? She came to look for this Hawthorne. How could it be them? In the eyes of the general public in Nangang district, these nuns from the monastery are truly beautiful and kind-hearted individuals. Whenever there is a disaster in Nangang district, they would provide free porridge and take care of those poor people who can't even afford a meal. The nun in the monastery, Celine, who always wears a milk-white nun's robe, would often perform miracles for free during that time, helping the poor who were afflicted with serious illnesses but couldn't afford medical treatment, and curing them so they could regain their health. This ability and compassion, in the eyes of the residents of Nangang district, are simply like angels descending to earth. So, although this monastery in Nangang district is not well known, its reputation has always been good. Ordinary residents may not think of them often, but once mentioned, they are definitely praised. But Alan is different. As one of the most reliable intermediaries in Nangang district, he knows many darker things here. For example, he is well aware that some audacious gangs have long set their sights on the beautiful nuns in that monastery and intend to plot against them. However, in the end, these ignorant fools, without exception, all vanished into thin air, disappearing without a trace. Yes, people disappear without a trace, neither alive nor dead. Alan is a middleman in their line of work, and the most important thing for him is intelligence. However, even with his intelligence capabilities, he cannot find out where these people have gone. This situation made him shudder, but he understood very well that curiosity kills, so naturally he didn't have the courage to conduct a deeper investigation. He could only maintain awe and repeatedly warn those new guys who had evil intentions towards the nuns to stay away from the convent. Others still thought that this cannibalistic old fox had a last trace of kindness, unable to bear seeing the filthy Nangang district, where the last trace of goodness was desecrated. And in moments like these, Aaron can only force a bitter smile and think to himself, I am clearly considering your safety, but that monastery is an entity we cannot afford to provoke. Chapter 29 Level 2 Sorcerer. Unfortunately, the innkeeper dare not speak such words to outsiders and can only keep them hidden in their heart. And today, seeing Hawthorne standing side by side with a nun, while just a moment ago I was trying to probe into his background and identity, Alan couldn't help but feel a wave of fear. I am just like those hooligans from earlier, I am looking for trouble. Until the figures of Hawthorne and Heidi disappeared at the door, he slowly came back to his senses, seriously reflecting on his words just now, checking for any loopholes in himself. It's okay. I was just complimenting him earlier, and the questions I asked were all very ordinary things. I haven't really asked for any key information yet. I won't inquire anymore. This is not something I can inquire about myself. After comforting and admonishing himself for a long time, he finally calmed down, wiped the cold sweat from his forehead, got up, returned to the counter, and continued to do his calculations. On the other side of the slum, inside an abandoned warehouse, the battered Shinasa thugs are currently recuperating here. After being hit by 2 thunderous waves from Hawthorne, some were unconscious, some had broken legs, some had broken ribs, some had facial injuries, and there were also a few lucky ones who only had minor external injuries. But no matter how severe their injuries were, they rarely had time to rest. Their leader, even though his frozen arm was now wrapped up like a rice dumpling, still had to lean on a crutch and report to his superiors. At this moment, sitting in front of him is a terrifying giant who is approximately 2 meters tall, with a body that is a size larger than his, and one blind eye, with a huge eye tattooed on the blind eye. His only remaining eye stared emotionlessly at the bald man, making his scalp tingle and a layer of cold sweat form. However, he had no choice but to bravely report the whole process in a dramatic manner. Fortunately, in the end, the mage from the scattered tower did not attack us and let us return. My subordinate is incompetent and suffered a defeat. Please punish me, boss. He sounded sad, angry, and ashamed. On the surface, he was apologizing, but in reality, he was shifting blame fiercely. He blamed another group of people for the failure that resulted from his own misjudgment and the order to attack together with Hawthorne. Sure, here is the translation. Sure enough, next, his boss, the one-eyed dragon in front of him, lowered his eyelids and said, "It's not your fault, there was a mistake in the intelligence. This grandson Daviel is really willing to spend money to hire a mage here." After cursing, he then looked up and said to the bald man, "Take good rest with your brothers and try to heal your injuries before the night of the double moon, don't delay the delivery." A few days ago, One-Eyed Dragon and his team were assigned a mission to transport a very precious cargo, which they themselves did not know what it was, secretly into the port of Libel and complete the handover on the night of the double moon. So, they chose the most common method. Using their connections within the Amazon Fisheries Company, they mixed that item with a batch of fish catches, and then entered the port from the South Harbor area. However, I don't know which joint leaked the news, but Daviel Starsong, a special agent of the Scattered Tower, actually obtained this confidential information, then sent him a letter, and made a bold request. The One-Eyed Dragon is unwilling to pay this hush money, so he plans to use physical means to silence him. However, no one knows what Daviel, this cunning golden elf, has transformed into or where he is lurking. Therefore, Cyclops reluctantly agreed verbally, and then secretly took action. He first kidnapped his bodyguard, Yagura, who was a female half-orc, and then forced her to reveal the time and place of their next meeting. Finally, he captured Daviel in one fell swoop. Unexpectedly, the other party had already sensed it and sent a mage to act together, and then turned around and beat them up. This time, I have really made an enemy with Daviel. I reckon that from now on, not only will this guy sell the information, but he will also seek revenge on me. With this in mind, the one-eyed pirate's eye gleamed, and finally, he gritted his teeth and said, "You guys take care of your injuries. I'll go inform the commander. With our abilities, we can no longer solve this matter." The internal ranks of the Shanasa Guild, from low to high, are Agent of the Eye, Ray of the Eye, Guild Commander, and Hand of the Eye. Among them, the Bald One, who is a small leader, is known as the Agent of the Eye, while his superior, the One-Eyed Dragon, is called the Ray of the Eye. And the commander in the mouth of the Cyclops is naturally a character of the Guild Commander level. He said this, casually reached out and patted the bald man's shoulder, and loudly said, "At most, I will just endure a scolding and maybe a whipping. All of you, take care of your injuries and don't take this matter to heart." The bald man was instantly moved to tears, not knowing how much sincerity was contained within. "I am incompetent, it's all my fault for being incompetent. They were performing insincerely, while outside the warehouse, two tall and thin figures wearing black leather jackets and black top hats stood silently. Is this the level of the person the Castellant family hired? One of them shook their head slightly and sighed softly. As we had anticipated, our partner is not very reliable, another person said. Fortunately, our power will also be enhanced on the night of the double moon. At worst, we will simply take away the illusionist's arm guard directly when the time comes. That night, inside the monastery, in the study, Hawthorne put down the magic book in his hand, ending his study session. As a result, the chaotic thoughts that had been suppressed by the magic in the study flooded his mind, leaving him feeling quite unsettled. He then brought up the system and looked through his attribute panel, frowning and constantly weighing his options. Do you want to level up the Warlock class to level 2 right now? Chapter 30, The Butterfly That Breaks Through the Door. In the past, Hawthorne was worried that if he upgraded too quickly, he would bite off more than he could chew, not fully understand, and have a bunch of unfamiliar abilities. He wouldn't know which one to use on the battlefield, and as a result, his combat effectiveness would not be fully utilized. After all, I haven't completely understood these few magic books yet. Moreover, purification points have more uses, such as constructing new buildings and so on. Therefore, he was more inclined to save them for later use in case of emergencies. But today's encounter gave him a wake-up call. The feeling of being hit on the back of the head in that instant, now that he has calmed down, upon careful reflection, still makes this person who has never seen blood feel scared. Although his hometown is also rural, Hwasong has never even killed a chicken before. At most, he would dare to throw a basketball at them. Cough. In short, he, who lived in a peaceful era, is still haunted by fear now. Today's fight was intense. Fortunately, both thunderclap waves almost exploded, and the battle ended instantly. Otherwise, I really don't know how many more troubles would have occurred. However, even so, with my own mana, I can only cast 2 first-level spells. In total, I only have 4 mana points, which is really a low margin of error. Fortunately today, only 2 gang members hit themselves, and they were both protected by blade guards at the time, so I didn't get hurt much. Although these guys are very weak and have not received systematic training, and even generally do not have a first-level warrior professional level, I am only a first-level sorcerer myself, so I do not have an absolute advantage in terms of ability. If other gangs are not scared, the long sticks and short sticks continue to hit themselves on the head, knocking themselves unconscious, or if they have more experience, like in a game, shooting themselves from a distance with a light crossbow. After all, the trick of sword blade protection can only withstand 1 attack, and the strength of the Aegis of Aegisius is not high. If they really break through the force field, it's hard to say who will win or lose, and what will happen to oneself. After all, my own first 3-dimensional attributes, especially physical attributes, are ridiculously low. This means that my ability to withstand attacks is also very low. If it weren't for the protection of spells, I'm afraid that if thugs came at me with a stick, I would fall down. Replaying today's battle like this, he became more and more frightened. On the night of the double moon, when the monsters go wild, who knows what other unexpected things will happen. So, increasing combat power is definitely something that must be done now. Anyway, on that day, after purifying Yuta, there will definitely be a large amount of purification points added to my account. I won't be lacking in this kind of thing in the future. So, let's upgrade first. Determined, he then extended his finger and tapped on the system panel. In an instant, a dense purifying white light enveloped his body, an infinite amount of magic, as well as countless powers of higher levels than magic, were infused into his body, and then formed into a completely new power. After a moment, the white light dissipated, and Hawthorne, filled with anticipation, looked back at his attribute panel. Then he immediately wilted. Is that it? With the increase of the sorcerer's level to level 2, his maximum mana points also increased to 6, the same as a regular mage. At the same time, he also acquired a new professional ability, Demonic Energy Invocation. However, Rune Guardian's Eye, you can understand any written language. Just this simple description, nothing else. Hawthorne couldn't help but feel like crying without tears. How is it an auxiliary ability outside of battle? This is good now. 300 purification points spent, combat power. It cannot be said that there is no improvement at all, but it can only be said that the effect is minimal. After all, the increase in the maximum mana value by 2 points allows him to cast 3 spells in battle, which can be considered a rather significant improvement. But the main focus of this upgrade is clearly the magic energy invocation. And it just gave me this thing. For Hawthorne at the moment, the most desired magical invocation is either something like Painful Demon Burst, that can greatly increase the damage of the spell, Demon Energy Burst, or something like Demonic Vitality, that can allow him to endlessly cast the spell, False Life, on himself, enhancing his self-defense capabilities. In any case, it should not be a supportive spell like the Eye of the Rune Guardian, purely used for pushing the plot of battles. System, you tricked me. Give me back those 300 purification points. I might as well just directly upgrade my attributes. With a long sigh, Hawthorne looked at his remaining 550 purification points, his expression somewhat frustrated. To go from level 2 to level 3, you need a total of 600 purification points, and he happens to be short by exactly 50 points. Forget it, I don't want to think about it. Anyway, I will eventually be promoted to level 2. And the increase in 2 points of mana is better than nothing. Converge your mindset and continue studying. He forced himself to calm down, rubbed his temples, then got up, stretched his waist, took a break, and prepared to continue studying. However, in the next moment, the door of the study was suddenly pushed open. He thought it was Heidi who had come, so he turned and looked towards the door, only to find that the memory witch butterfly with black hair and black pupils had stopped at the door, with her beautiful big eyes staring straight at him. Immediately, Hawthorne's heart jumped to his throat, almost losing his composure. How did she get in? Damn it, didn't they say the witches wouldn't come to the study for years? The first time I come to the study, it's covered in thick dust everywhere. How did this witch suddenly barge in today? Hawthorne cursed angrily in his heart, and it's no wonder his mood was so restless. He simply couldn't accept the scene before his eyes. It's like you're playing Resident Evil, hiding in a safe house and organizing your belongings, but then the tyrant, without any sportsmanship, kicks the door open and charges towards you. What's the point of playing this anymore? He has millions of dirty words in his heart that he wants to say, but he hasn't realized that the butterfly came today specifically for him. The butterfly feels something is wrong, very wrong. Even though when they left in the morning, Hawthorne and Heidi had tried their best to keep their distance from each other, they had already had countless intimate and deep interactions, and they were already inseparable. Some of their habits have long been formed, and many actions are completely unconscious and instinctive. For example, the almost non-existent sense of distance between the two, and the subtle reverence that Heidi has for Hawthorne. Perhaps their disguise can deceive most witches who are only interested in sucking people's souls and not interested in humans themselves, such as Yuta and other witches. But for a witch like Butterfly, who enjoys reading people's memories, these disguises are quite unimpressive. Although she didn't notice anything deeper, she felt a very strong sense of dissonance. There must be something secretive between these two people. So, the confused butterfly hid in the dark and quietly observed.